Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening and welcome to our Cabinet meeting. I'd like to welcome members and officers to the meeting who are joining us online as well as in the room. And I'd also like to welcome members of the public and the Leader of the Opposition and Chair of Overview and Scrutiny and Chair of Finance, Audit and Risk Committee as well. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to take the attendance of officers who are attending virtually and explain how the proceedings will work tonight.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to do a quick roll call of those officers attending online to check that they can hear and we can hear them. So do we have Sarah Pateman? Do we have Louise Symes?
Yes.
Thank you, Sarah. And do we have Louise Symes? Do we have
Yes.
Martin Lawrence? Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
no worries, thank you. And do we have Martin Lawrence?
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Louise Randall?
Good evening, yes, present.
Thank you. Christine Crofts?
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Chloe Hipwood? Claire Skills?
Present. Good evening.
Thank you. Jeanette Thompson?
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Anthony Roach? Sarah Kingsley?
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Do we have Debbie Coates?
Good evening, present.
Thank you. And can I just check Chloe Hipwood again, please?
Good evening, present.
Thank you. And Anthony Roach? Okay. Are there any other officers in attendance that I haven't called out? Okay. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live, and at which point it will turn red, at which point you can speak. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions before we start? Okay, back to you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much. Apologies for absence. I've received none this evening. However, Councillor Amy Allen isn't yet with us. I'm hoping that she'll be joining us shortly. Next item is the minutes of our meeting of the 14th of March 2023. I'd like to propose that we take these as read and approve them as a true record of the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of March. Could I have a seconder, please? Happy to second, Chair. Thank you very much. Any comments? Nope. Can we have a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next, notification of other business. There's been no other business notified. Chair's announcements. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recording will be available on the North Herts website and the film recording via our YouTube channel. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision and means that as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Members are also reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcements on the agenda. And for the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of an item and still be able to vote on that item. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point during the proceedings. I've agreed as well a change of the agenda order because we've got a couple of external speakers presenting and a rather long agenda this evening. So I'm going to take item 6, which is the presentation in respect of the conservation area first, which Mr. Cook has got some public participation on. And then I will move to item number 9, which is the allocation of the homelessness prevention grant, so that we can hear from Sarah and don't keep her too long as well. And then we'll flow naturally from item 9 into 10, which is the local authority housing fund. And then we'll be back on track with item 7, 8, etc., as per the remainder of the agenda. There we go. The reports and referrals from scrutiny and FAR will be taken with each of the items that they relate to as well. So moving onwards, I have item number 5, public participation. We're joined tonight by both Sarah Pateman for Survivors Against Domestic Abuse and Stevenage Borough Council to provide a presentation, which, as I said, will give ahead of item number 9. I think it's best that we have the presentation fitting with the cabinet business that we're considering. And Mr. Cook is also joining us to present on the Ashwell Conservation Area. The items referred from other committees, I'm not going to tell you all of those at this point in time. We've got letters A to H, so I don't think you need the titles of each report, which brings us on neatly to item number 16 and the Ashwell Conservation Area. Could I please invite David Cook to provide us with a 5-minute verbal presentation?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your courtesy in extending the invitation this evening. The first point I wanted to make is that I think it points out in your consultant's report that there's a bit of misunderstanding about what a conservation area review is and is not. Some of that stems, I think, from the approach taken by Ashwell Parish Council, which included some areas for your consideration without sound reasons, subsequently sought to beef up the justification for that. I quote, beef up the justification, including actually guerrilla planting plum trees, in the hope that that would strengthen the case for conservation area status. I've left some emails at the end of the line there, which are released under FOI that illustrate that point. Moving on to more substantive and important matters, Chair. I wanted to draw a contrast between the consultation that is undertaken in regard to this exercise and the consultation that might have to be done if a householder sought to change their PD rights. So conservation area status changes a person's permitted development rights. When I wanted to change my permitted development rights, quite correctly, there was a planning site notice put up. All my near neighbours got a letter explaining what I was proposing to do and asking them if they wished to comment and inviting them to comment and saying how they would comment. My changes didn't require any change to the land registry. Putting a property in a conservation area requires it to be changed on the land registry. So it's at least as serious, if not more so. No site notice was put up in the conservation area. No person whose house might move into the conservation area as a result of decisions taken tonight has had a letter explaining to them that that is what is going to happen. No person whose house might move into a conservation area tonight has been invited to comment personally with a letter on your headed notepaper. Your report says at page 315 in 8.2 that interested parties were invited to comment. I would think the homeowners who are going to lose some permitted development rights might be considered interested parties. And I just wonder whether in future, when you're considering these exercises, it might be a good idea to perhaps think about whether that consultation should include an individual letter to a householder who will be impacted as a result of a proposal. It would happen if their neighbour was doing it. So why wouldn't it happen directly to them? The third point I wanted to make was in respect of the finger of development. If we go to 339 in your report, there's a picture of the conservation area and there's a little finger of development at the west, which goes, it is suggested should be in the conservation area. There are 4 properties in there. I would ask perhaps your consultants or your officers to comment. I think the 4th property, West Point, is a meritorious property. It's a Victorian villa. It looks very nice. I've sent pictures out to all members. And you can imagine that someone would think that's a property of merit. It needs to be listed or it needs to be a building of special local interest. The other 3 properties are absolutely in no way could be described as special historically. or be described as special architecturally. They are two bungalows, one which has got a double dormer on it with felt roof on top of it, and a new build, which is no different in its architectural design to the ones in Townsend Meadow, which have been removed from the conservation area. Those three properties are included in the conservation area, in my opinion, only to get to West Point. And I think your consultants and your planning officers would have the good grace to acknowledge.
You've got 1 minute left.
Thank you. Would have the good grace to acknowledge that West Point's the only one of the four that we might consider to be of conservation area status. The problem with that is you lose the defined boundary of the conservation area. And I think you're including three properties that don't belong in the conservation area. And that's not what the NPPF says. I think it devalues the conservation area. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, so does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cook? No? Reese? You don't have any questions? No. No, Reese, what? Yes, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks for your presentation, Mr. Cook. So perhaps just in short, you could so you can clear I can be clear in my mind that what specifically would you in us looking at this paper tonight, what specifically would you like us to do differently from that? That's the thing I'm struggling a little bit with. I tried to listen obviously carefully to your presentation, but it's that trying to what is it that you would like us to do different if we could, and there's a big if as to whether we actually could, but what would you like us to do differently if that was available to us?
May I, Chair? Thank you. Two things. Firstly, I'd ask you to contemplate whether or not the distinction between what an individual householder changing their PD rights does in terms of transparency and you do in terms of letters on your headed notepaper to impacted persons, with what's happened in this case where no impacted person has had a letter from you on your headed notepaper explaining to them what this change is and how it affects their household. That feels like a bit of an anomaly to me. So that's point one. Point two, I think that finger of conservation area on the western side, taken in them four properties, weakens the entrance to the conservation area, and it is out with the NPPF in particular that says it must be special architecturally as special historically. I think it's done to get to West Point, but you could designate West Point as a building of local interest to recognise its significance. That way you don't have to put three entirely unremarkable, if not negative in terms of their visual appearance, into a conservation area, thus loosening the significance of it.
Thank you very much. Ruth, are you wanting to come in on that?
Well, I was going to present the report and maybe address some of the issues.
Okay. If there's no further questions for Mr. Cook, then I will move on and let Ruth address the report and see what you pick up.
Okay, so the report, as we've heard, has gone out to consultation. And what we're being asked to do tonight is to approve and adopt it. Following consultation, there have been some revisions made. They're all detailed in your Appendix A. Just to note the points around consultation. So as Mr. Cook quite rightly says, in 8.2, interested parties were contacted, but it also says the parish council publicised the consultation period to local residents. So I think on this occasion, the North Herts has asked the parish council to do the direct consultation with residents. Now, I would not be averse to revisiting the way we consult and considering that we might send out letters direct to residents on our headed notepaper in the future, but residents should have been aware of it through their parish council. There was also a consultation event held in the village hall where the consultants were available to answer questions. And my having been brought up in a small village, my guess would be that the grapevine works pretty well, and anybody who was interested would have had that opportunity to comment. So I don't think we've knowingly excluded anyone, but happy to reconsider whether letters should be sent direct, and I will discuss that matter with officers for the future. So that's the first point. The second point is that all comments were duly considered. And I believe Mr. Cook made a number of comments, most of which were agreed to and revisions were made. This particular comment around West End, our officers, following further communication from Mr. Cook, have gone back to the consultants and asked them about it. So these three properties, 30, 32 and 34 West End, were included in the conservation area boundary designated in 1968, 78 and 1986. So this isn't the first revision. The boundaries that are around those properties have been looked at by our consultants, who've concluded that the conservation area boundary should be amended to follow the property boundaries. So they have been slightly amended, but not in keeping with what Mr. Cook has actually asked. And the properties mentioned make a neutral contribution. So I think it's fair to say that they're not particularly historic, but they make a neutral contribution to the conservation area. And along with the area further to west, they kind of frame the entrance to the village. So it's about an entranceway into the village. And so our consultants have looked at this several times and reconsidered, and they are of the view that it should stay, they should remain included as per the cabinet report, and that you'll find that on page 21. So we're recommending that remains the same. The other thing about it is by including them, there is potential to enhance them. So I think that is an important consideration. So I don't think I'll say anything further. And I would like to propose recommendations 2.1 to 2.4, that we approve the new conservation area as designated in the papers. It's approved and adopted. All officers are authorised to undertake the associated administrative tasks to finalise it, and that delegated authority is granted to the service director and myself to make any minor non-material corrections. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jarvis, are you looking to second this, or is this a question?
I'm happy to second it, but I was going to ask a question.
All right, I'll take you seconding. What's your question?
I mean, firstly, an observation. I mean, I think that the point that's been made about the contribution of West End to the village entrance is a good one. I also think the point about consultation is probably a good one. And in particular, I noticed that it doesn't appear to be any consultation of the local ward member, either on this one or on the Purton one. And I think that would be a good thing to do in future, and something that could be done fairly easily. But I think Mr. Cook makes a good point about ensuring that consultation reaches people. Whether or not a letter is the most appropriate way to do that, I don't know. But but the other point I had was really a question, in that Townsend Meadow, which is a development of new houses, has been excluded from the conservation area, which also excludes Angels Meadow. But Woodford Close, which is a 1970s development between the two, never has been. So I guess I'm not entirely clear what our stance is on conservation areas and new developments. Maybe it's just we exclude ones that are called something Meadow, but that doesn't seem very likely.
Thank you for your question. That's slightly concerning to hear that the local ward members were not consulted. I think we should definitely do that. Can I ask Claire, please, our officer, to respond to that question about the meadows? Not specifically the name, but why some areas were included. I think that was slightly facetious, but why are Townsend Meadows excluded, but Woodford, was it? Woodford Close is included. Is Claire available?
Yes, Townsend Meadow has been excluded because it doesn't make a positive contribution to the conservation area, whereas the areas round it are the Homes for Heroes, and that has the integrity that we're looking for the conservation area. So our consultants have suggested that Townsend Meadows isn't appropriate to be included at this point.
All right, you coming back, Steve?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to argue we should do anything other than adopt this, and that's why I seconded it. But I do think we need to be clear, both for our own purposes and for the public, about what our view is about including relatively new developments. And Woodford Close is much older than Townsend Meadow, but including relative areas of relatively new building in conservation areas, because they might conclude that we're being a bit inconsistent here, and there may be some very good detailed reasons. But I think we do need to be clearer about that.
Fair comment. I think there are 4 character areas designated in Ashwell, and the character area 4 is post-war, so that's relatively recent, isn't it? But not quite as but not as recent as 1970. So yeah, and Dark Officer has said that they're older. Okay. I don't think I've got anything further to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any further questions or points of debate on this? No. Okay, in that case, if we could proceed to the vote on those recommendations, please.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, yes, Councillor Albert.
Yeah, obviously in passing that, and that's why I mentioned this now. I mean, I think it would be good to pick up the points that colleagues have made around consultation, and obviously that Mr. Cook has made this evening, and if we can take that away for future occasions, obviously including ward members and so on, and whether we should consider the letter process and so on. So we can pick that as a specific action point. Don't think it needed to be included in the vote, but if we can take that away as an item.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that point's been made very loud and clear and was quite important. Okay, Mr. Cook, you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, or if you've got better places to be, you're free to leave as well.
In council meetings in my lifetime, not to spend any more, as charming as you are.
Well, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Right, and that brings us on to our second item of public participation this evening, which is Sarah Pateman from Survivors Against Domestic Abuse. And this is going to link then into item number 9, which is at page 63 on the agenda, colleagues. So if I could pass over to Sarah to make her presentation. Oh, before I do that, Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is probably the right moment for me to declare an interest. So I'm a trustee of Survivors Against Domestic Abuse. And because they form part of the recommendations in agenda item 9, I'm going to leave it to the deputy executive member to introduce the report once the presentation has concluded and answer any questions there may be. And on that note, I'm going to leave the room.
Very good.
And return at the end of the item. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Can I pass over to Sarah to make her presentation, please?
Dropping and the net is dropping out. Presentation with you evening.
I think we've got a.
How we.
Sorry, Sarah, we've got a bit of a intermittent signal and the sound quality is not great. Can you bear with us? We've got your presentation up. It's the bandwidth's low. Have you got an alternate network that you're able to connect to at all? Or maybe if you turn your camera off, sometimes that helps with the bandwidth.
Let me turn the camera.
No, that's not helpful. Right, have we got anybody?
Let me go and joined.
I think, colleagues, what I will do is I propose let's take a short 5-minute break and we'll provide Sarah with some technical assistance and see if we can get this back online, because I think this is quite an important presentation and I would like us to have the opportunity to hear it. So if we break now and reconvene at 8 o'clock.
Hiya, Sarah. Can we just check if you can hear us and we can hear you now, please? You're still muted, Sarah. Afraid you're still muted, Sarah.
So, is that okay?
That looks, yeah, that looks significantly better. Yes, yeah.
I'm
thank-
on my phone, so bear with. So hopefully that's
Yes,
all
that
right.
yeah, that's better. Well, we're just waiting for members to come back and then we'll
Okay.
restart the meeting. All right,
I'm
thanks.
so sorry about that. I don't
That's
know.
all right.
Good. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. Councillor Albert. Are we ready? All right. So the technical issues have been resolved, everyone. Thank you very much for your patience. I will now pass over to Sarah to deliver her presentation.
So good evening, everybody. Sorry for the late response to that and to the technical issues that we were having here. So I'd just like to run you through our services as SADA. If you've got any questions, please do ask. Feel free to interrupt me during the presentation. I'm quite happy to take questions as we go along if everyone's happy to give them. So if we get started, the next slide, please. So as some of you may know, we are a domestic abuse service that started in Stevenage back in 2014, and then have been working closely with North Hart Student Council for quite a number of years. We offer a wide range of support mechanisms, which includes tailored one-to-one support, referrals to other agencies and partners, implementing additional security to keep families safe in their homes so they can stay in their homes and not have to flee, support with fleeing to a place of safety when they have to, provide help with housing issues, including our own safe houses, basic needs, things like food, toiletries, housing items, things that people don't think that we take for granted, but actually a lot of people that flee or that have left a relationship don't have access to. Debt and benefits advice and guidance, support accessing legal advice and support where we work with the Citizens Advice Bureau around this. Our regular drop-in meetings so that obviously people can talk to other people in the same situation as them. These are both virtually and in person. We offer courses like You, Me and Mom to help people re-look at their relationships with their children. And we also offer modern slavery service. And at the bottom of that slide there, you can just see how the increases in North Harts has actually occurred over the last 3 years. And although it is very upsetting to see the significant rise in cases, what you have to look at is data is what you see of it. For me, that means that more people have come forward that probably wouldn't have done before and they wouldn't have done before 2020. We're now seeing those people that will come forward and ask for advice and support. Next slide, please. So safe spaces. So Stevenage had its first safe space and then it came over to North Harts. And these are properties where victims and survivors of domestic abuse have somewhere to live. It's not a refuge, it's not a hotel, it's a home. These houses are from 1-bedroom bedsit accommodation up to our biggest is a 5-bedroom house that can actually have up to 7 family members in it. They're all privately rented. And they're made for, so there is HMOs, flats, and to accommodate various makeups of families and sizes. It means that we can house somebody that's got a grandmother, a mother and a child in a property. We can house men and their children, which we're seeing on the increase. We can house people with special needs. We can have people that need carers that go into properties and see them. And we can have access to people that need to have wheelchairs. Our properties stretch across Letchworth, Royston, South Cambridgeshire, Huntingdon, Stevenage, Hertford, Enfield and Hatfield, which means that people have lots of different areas that they can flee to. They're funded by clients claiming housing benefit. So actually we make sure that they can pay the rent. And also we look at how we can support them if they're in jobs. So we can look at trying to find some sort of funding to try and support them so they can at least have a normal way of life as possible. The accommodation is completely furnished to support all of our partners. So we make sure that there are beds in all of the houses. They have cutlery, crockery, towels, the toiletries. The garden is done on every 3 weeks if there's a garden. They will have an allocated social worker, an allocated support worker that visits the properties on a weekly basis to make sure they've got all the support they need. We try and help them to look at essential bags and food parcel deliveries, and the families stay initially for 3 months, but this can be extended. And in some cases during the pandemic, people were in the properties for up to 18 months while we looked at for their forever home. Next slide, please. Can we have the next slide, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sarah. I think
sorry.
the presentations just got stuck a moment.
Oh, God, okay.
Is that the next slide?
Yeah.
But she's already.
Next one.
So can we move it onwards? There we
That's
go.
it, yeah.
Thank you.
Right, so this is what a safe space in our refuge looks like. So what we wanted to have was somewhere that was really homely. So all of our houses are decorated and are furnished to this standard. The idea is that it is as homely as it possibly can be, so that when you go in there, the beds are made, the tables are there laid, there's everything there you would need. So you don't think, actually, I'm walking to somewhere that's got absolutely nothing. And that's the idea of it. Next slide, please. So moving on to one of our little projects that we're working on, well, not so little anymore. So we started with some funding we had from yourselves previous years to look at the links with deprivation and domestic abuse. So people don't automatically think about deprivation and domestic abuse, but when you look at the statistics and look at the poverty and look at the issues around that, there are some characteristics and things that lead on to domestic abuse when there is this sort of issues around deprivation. Deprivation in the home may cause a strain on relationships, which in some cases can then incite domestic abuse. It also prolongs the victim's exposure to abuse by reducing their ability to leave and makes clients more deprived upon leaving the relationship. So we wanted to explore if households suffering from deprivation show high rates of domestic abuse. And we picked an area which would actually in North Hart, so we could work with North Hart's clients and look at where these pockets of deprivation were. Next slide, please. So the projects enable us to work with those areas in North Hart where we know there was underreported domestic abuse. We've been working with partners to support victims, survivors, and those closest to them. We hope to bring people together and build stronger relationships between services and service users across this community, especially when we know that there are areas where people wouldn't normally report domestic abuse. Next slide, please. So initially we met with lots of our partners in the community, including local schools, yourselves, Settle Housing Association, First Garden City Homes, the police, the family centres, and discuss how we saw the project progressing. We wanted to put a whole team together around this piece of work to sort of have a judgment approach to actually looking at the deprivation situation. So together the partners were able to open and have honest conversations about domestic abuse and deprivation and explore how we could develop working partnerships further to bring this piece of work to fruition. Next slide, please. So some of the themes that came from those meetings were to have a designated support worker for this project and are happy to explore co-location. So we looked at co-locating in some of the schools. Have a designated referral form for the services, so to refer the families to, so we could plot the work of the project. Services to meet every 3 months to discuss the project and data and the families. And SADA were happy to offer further domestic abuse training to any partnership agencies. Next slide, please. So we looked at what did we need to do first of all. We quickly realised that one of the main issues we had was around training, especially for schools. So as all the partnerships came together, we knew we'd done training with Settle, we knew we'd done training with yourselves, we knew we'd done training with some of our police colleagues, but actually when we talked to teachers, there's no training for them at all around domestic abuse. We asked them what happens when someone comes to a teacher and says that they're suffering from domestic abuse, or they've got a family member that is, or a child comes to them about it. They would speak to the police, they would speak to children's services or adult care services, and then they get to hold that information. And actually they have no way of then knowing what to do with that information, how to refer clients and families on for further support. So we looked at how we could support them as a partnership and actually support them with training to be able to then support them with talking to other families within the school. So we ensure that all partners involved was kept up to date, especially where there's children in schools, and we're ensuring that clients require benefit advice, and we are referring people to citizens advice. So next slide, please. So after our first meeting with local head teachers, we had started to see research from a mixture of local schools. We started to locate in 2 schools. We were chairing and attending regular multi-agency professionals meetings to discuss complex cases, which means that then we could actually get in there a lot earlier rather than these people becoming homeless and then having to deal with the situation right at the very end. We're able to actually look at it further down from that and actually say, okay, how can we support them before they get to the stage they've got to move, and actually support them to do that. We placed 2 families in need in a safe space accommodation straight away from the school. We provided all the domestic abuse training for the schools, and we secured a further funding of 14,000 to continue the project through Letchworth Heritage. Next slide, please. In total, so far, we received 10 referrals and provided clients with support in things like food parcels, supermarket vouchers, mobile phones, safe accommodation, referrals to help them with security, referrals for legal forces, and attended host and related partnership meetings. This included also supporting some of the family members with actually making statements with the police, which actually can be quite daunting. Next slide, please. We've also liaised with partners and developed a multi-agency approach to actually tackling domestic abuse further and going that little bit further. And rather than firefighting, actually being able to look and think about how we can support families earlier to make sure that they get the long-term support they need. We set up food banks at a school, at Northfield School. They said that they really, really needed this. So we talked to a food bank in Letchworth, and they helped us to set that up for them. And we actually provided them with their second food bank today. Also provided Easter eggs to clients' families. We found out that a lot of the children weren't going to get Easter eggs and things like that. So we were able to source some of those and made sure that the children had all those. So what's next? So we're now looking at emergency safe space. So we have in total 31 safe spaces and a refuge. And as of today, when I've checked how many properties were available, I have 1 room in refuge because someone left yesterday. And I have 1 single accommodation room in a bedsit property in a large house. That is it. I've got another 3 properties that are coming available in the next 3 weeks over towards Huntingdon. And I still am looking for more. It is a never-ending cycle of the more we do, the more we need. And it's that vicious circle. But the one thing that we really, really need is what I call the Friday night bus. So Martin will relate to this. Friday at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock is when the Friday night bus comes with people that have really sort of like want to flee and haven't been able to do it until that Friday afternoon and then decide they're going to do it. So where do they go? They end up in a hotel or an emergency accommodation, which isn't always fit for their needs if they're fleeing domestic abuse and isn't actually stacked with food and things like this. There's all these things that go with it. Before now, I've been at your council, I think at 6 o'clock on a Friday night, trying to sort out accommodation that for people. What we're going to have is 2 emergency accommodations that are always going to be available. They'll be available 24 hours a day through our out-of-hours service so that we can make sure that those people that need that emergency accommodation there and then when they decide they want to flee, that we have it available. We're also going to be looking to extend the community deprivation project and look at how we can support more families in the area. And what other areas do we look at? We've really focused on Letchworth, where they were really, really coming forward with all the teachers were very forthcoming, but we also want to look at some areas around in Hitchin and Royston, and also look at some of the working villages. We spent some time looking at what it means for people that live in rural areas and village life and how difficult it is to report domestic abuse. So that's what we want to focus on for the next few months. We want to support for North Herts around modern slavery and gang violence. And this is another area that we really support North Herts with. And I think on average, we probably have about, I think last year we had 7 cases of people fleeing due to gang violence that we obviously supported yourselves with. Want to continue with our North Herts and Stevenage Women's Centre and offer that support where we do our drop-ins, which is in Stevenage, but we've also got a drop-in that's due to open in Letchworth Town Centre on the 17th of July. And this means that our North Herts clients can actually go meet a support worker there and also get that peer support from other people that have been in the same situation as them. We also want to continue to run the drop-in virtually because this is really useful for people that work. It means that people can actually drop in on a Friday morning just before lunch and have a chat with other people in the same situation, and they don't have to, it doesn't impact on their work or their life really. And then we're running the You, Me, Mum courses again for 24 and 25. And that is where we are, if anyone's got any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Sarah. I think that the work that SADA does and that the Women's Centre as well has provided over the years to residents of this district is absolutely invaluable. And I'm really pleased that we're getting a Women's Centre opening now in Letchworth that can help serve the needs of people that live in this district, because I know that it can be difficult at times for some of our residents here to get over to Stevenage and access that really invaluable resource. So colleagues, do we have any questions based on Sarah's presentation? Amy.
Hiya. My question is probably to yourself and to us, really. So I guess to Sean, what is the process for housing when it comes to social housing if someone fleeing a domestic violence situation happens to be jointly named on a mortgage, so they own a property?
We will house in a safe space the same as we would everybody else. We treat everybody exactly the same. And then we will support them to get legal advice around what is the property theirs. Is it joint owned? And then obviously we can speak to our legal advisor. Is actually a solicitor that works for the CAB. And we've worked with them for quite a number of years. And she is really good at the advice that she gives around that. And we will keep them housed in a safe space until such time that either whatever might happen with that property, they might decide to sell it or that they give up their interest in it. People want to do lots of different things when it comes to this situation. We've had people that have just wanted to walk away and not have anything out of it at all. And then other people have actually wanted to actually be part of the selling of the property, and then they've moved on to their own accommodation later. But we will keep someone in a safe space if we can until they've got their forever home. I don't like the idea of someone going from a safe space into temporary accommodation unless we really have to.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's actually a really powerful question and quite an important point, because it doesn't matter what your circumstances are in your life. If you are involved in an abusive relationship, if you are subject to domestic abuse in your home, you don't have to be in a deprived situation, in quote unquote, in commas, to need help and support. So I think it's invaluable that these spaces are there for every person who is experiencing domestic abuse. We should end the sort of stigma that it's only people in certain circumstances that find themselves needing to rely on this. This could happen to any person in any relationship. And I think it's great that SADA's there and is able to provide that safe way out and safe spaces for people who are struggling. Do we have any further questions, colleagues, for Sarah? Steve.
Yeah, I mean, acknowledging what you just said, there's clearly the deprivation project which is being run, and I wonder how the results of that are going to be assessed.
So we're going to
quite an interesting project potentially. That obviously have a need to try and deal with the increasing demand for your services, but that's a project that's going to try and drive down the demand.
Yeah.
Is it not? So how are you going to assess the success of that?
I mean, the success can look very differently for different reasons. The idea for us is to looking at, so how many less referrals are there coming through sort of homeless? How many people are coming through referrals last minute where we could have looked at them quicker? So we're doing surveys with people. We're asking questions on behalf of the police as well about reporting before. Is this the first time you reported? Why haven't you continued with the police before? This type of thing. So also we can get as much data as we possibly can, and then we can share that data of what we found. Every time we've done this in our project it started in September last year. So all the data we've got is very, very new at the moment, but we will be looking at what the data show us, what areas it is. Does it affecting people that are on low incomes? Is it people that are on what we would say medium incomes? Is it people that aren't working? I think for me, it's been a shock to show that deprivation comes in so many different ways. It's not just the people that don't have any money for food. It's the people that are struggling to pay what they would normally pay for and what strain that has on their relationship. But I would say if any of the councils are interested in this project, I'd be quite happy for them to come along and sit in the meetings that we have at Central Housing Association every quarter and be part of the project if they'd like to be.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Any more questions? Okay, grand. In which case, thank you so much for that presentation, Sarah. I think it was incredibly helpful and useful, and it's great to hear the continued good work that SADA is doing across the district. I'm going to move us on to item number 9, which is the allocation of the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities Homelessness Prevention Grant and Domestic Abuse Funding for 23-24 to 24-25. As Councillor Prendergast has made a declaration of interest, I'm going to ask Councillor Winstanley to present the report.
Hello. This item number 9, as the chair has just said, is allocation of the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities Homelessness Prevention Grant and Domestic Abuse Funding Awards for both 23-24 and 24-25. I'll just go through the sort of headline figures. It's quite self-explanatory, but I'll just go through the figures. So the homelessness prevention grant totals 746,000 for the 2 years, and the domestic abuse grant is 71,000 for the 2 years. The recommendations are as follows. Key Stage, which is a provider of the PAIRS scheme in the Lord Lister in Hitchin, will receive 134,000 for 23-24 and 151,000 for 24-25. One YMCA, which runs the Hitchin Sanctuary and 20 High Street, also known as Templars in Baldock, gets 172,000 for 23-24 and 172,000 for 24-25. There's also an award for SADA's core housing service, which is 20,000 for 24-25, and a rough sleeper outreach award of 35,000 also for 24-25. The domestic abuse grant that I mentioned before, which totals 71,000 for the 2 years, will be awarded to SADA for their community project, which will be 35,000 for 23-24 and 36,000 for 24-25. The allocation of the funds is to continue the services that they provide currently, as demand for homelessness services remains very high. And the award to SADA is to support the vital work that we've just heard about, with domestic abuse being a major cause of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any questions for Councillor Winstanley or officers on this report? It's Councillor Albert.
Yeah, it's just on the SADA amounts, and I mean, Sarah's presentation was fantastic, and it really is. I mean, if you didn't already know the amazing work that they do, I guess I'm always sort of troubled at this point as to whether actually that we do or that we're able to do enough for SADA. Out of this, I'm very conscious that we obviously pay them that core service, the 20,000, which is ending this year, and effectively we're using that the money we're getting from government to use that as our 20,000 contribution. To some extent, this is funding, I have to say, that we would have probably wanted to have found anyway and fund anyway. But I guess the question is that there is a suggestion in the paper that there could be some more money available. Is that the case? Whether, I don't know whether Dave or officers, and whether that would be potentially allocatable to to SADA. And then obviously the other thing, just again as a question, I think it's welcome the 8.7 in the report around the sort of Key Stage and the arrangements, which obviously, because there was that subsidy loss that we discussed previously. Again, obviously, I mean, I've not seen the numbers, but I mean, obviously, it would take that officers have been through the numbers we've received from one YMCA and Key Stage very thoroughly to understand the funding gap that is there. Obviously, we haven't got that information here, but obviously just want to have some assurances that has been sort of thoroughly scrutinised, and obviously whether as obviously our service director for resources has also had a scrutinise that aspect as well, because I think it's really important that we make sure that we are actually looking at value for money here as well. These are amazingly important services. You can look at the numbers, but I just want to and we see the increase in the demand for those services, but I just want to make sure that in actually providing that money to Key Stage and One YMCA, we've actually gone through the books very thoroughly and scrutinised their requests in order that we get to these numbers here, because we haven't got that information here tonight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know if Martin Lawrence wants to provide any comment and feedback to Councillor Albert.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. So in terms of SADA, the service is actually embedded in the council's housing team. So it's very efficient. So they share the same system as the council's housing team, and we exchange information very easily. They provide support straight away. Not all cases will go to SADA, not all cases will end up with SADA. They actually stay with the council's housing team. The current settlement or contract levels do reflect current demand, but it's interesting to see how this new pilot goes. And obviously domestic abuse as a subject or as a cause of homelessness is only growing. So it's certainly something we'll keep an eye on. The levels seem manageable at these levels, but we need to see how it goes. You'll note as well, there is an extra provision that the managing director was informed about a couple of weeks ago, that DLUC have provided for the council around £200,000. So there is scope there to come back to this committee with proposals to increase that funding should the need be there. On the second item, subsidy loss has been resolved, as you said, Councillor Albert. The numbers have been looked at thoroughly. These services are very expensive, and it's very clear without this funding the services wouldn't exist. I don't believe the Director of Resources has viewed the figures, having said that, so very happy to share them with him if that's of help for his comment.
I think that probably would be helpful and beneficial on items concerning, I think, both the Lord Lister and 20 High Street. I think it does make sense for us to ensure that we are cross-referencing everything and ensuring that we are getting genuine value for money from these services, given some of the issues that we've seen at the locations. I don't know if Mr. Cooper has anything to add at this time.
Yeah, it's just to reassure, I suppose, Cabinet that a member of my team has been involved. Jodie Penfold in my team has been involved in looking at the figures, so they have had scrutiny from the finance team. I will look at them as well, but I do trust my officers in my team to do the work for me as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Reese.
I just wanted to ask a further question about recommendation 2.3 around obviously it's a very recent announcement of that extra grant, and Martin just alluded to it, the 200,000. And I just wonder if he could comment about how much of that, obviously it's designed for Ukrainian homelessness, do we have any idea at this stage how much of that might be needed for Ukrainians and how much might be available or left over that we can use for other support? I know it's very early, so maybe you don't have the answer, but I just thought it'd be interesting to ask the question at least.
Thank you. So we've been approached by less than 20 Ukrainian households for housing assistance in the last year and a half. And I think we have 3 households in temporary accommodation at the moment. As always, we're trying to support any household with housing challenges, with housing options. So this funding is very welcome. Because of the relatively low numbers, the overwhelming majority is likely to be proposed to be used on general housing pressures, but also on individual cases that are really complex. So I think the Ukrainian element will be quite small in reality.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions from anyone? Nope. Right. Could we then move to, oh, hang on, we've proposed this, but I don't think had a seconder for this item. Could I have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Allen. Okay. In that case, can we move to the vote, please? Oh gosh, I've suddenly realised because Councillor Winstanley's a deputy, technically he didn't propose the report because he doesn't have sufficient standing. I'm happy to propose the report. I think Councillor Allen's already seconded it. Can I have a vote now, please? Thank you.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Now, suppose since there's a vacant seat, we ought to get the cabinet member back in for the next item. Could someone go and fetch Councillor Prendergast, please? All right, so item number 10, which is at page 75 in your agenda packs, is the Local Area Housing Authority Fund, round number 2. This is a relatively recent intervention that's come through from government, so I'm going to ask Anthony Rush to present for us.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep my remarks brief. You'll remember, Cabinet, that we had round 1 of this funding earlier in the year, and we agreed to work with Settle. To update you on paragraph 7.2 in the report, we are just in the process of agreeing or working on with them on an MOU to deal with how the money will be allocated across to them and how it will be utilised. So to update on round 2, you will see that the emphasis is slightly different in that it's aimed at Afghans and at temporary accommodation for general use. The ask of the council is a bit more realistic this time, potentially. We mentioned in the report that we were reaching out to the registered providers, and colleagues in the housing team have done that. We reached out to 6. We have had responses from all 6. 4 have expressed an interest so far. 2 have said no, they're not in position to work with us on it. So in the light of that, and given the very short deadline that we're working to, which is early July, the recommendations before you are, if you are minded to try and support this scheme, to delegate down authority to a combination of people to make a final decision right before the deadline as to who it is that we're working with and what we put on that validation form. So we will come up with a way of assessing the expressions of interest that we've received, probably looking at things like deliverability, funding, whether anyone can do more than the government is asking us to do, those sorts of criteria, and we'll whittle it down to one proposed partner. So that's the update, Chair. Happy to answer any questions. Hopefully the report is self-explanatory.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? No, I think that's quite a self-explanatory report. I'm happy to propose the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Prendergast. Could we have a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now I'm going to jump us all the way back to item number 7 on the agenda, which is at page 15, and we will also be taking item 6A, which is one of our scrutiny recommendations around the corporate peer challenge with this. I did say at the start of the meeting that the chair of scrutiny was here. That's because I was thinking we had the same chair as last year, which of course we don't. Sorry, David. I don't think we've got either the chair or the vice chair of scrutiny with us this evening. So the recommendations from scrutiny, I think the reports will speak for themselves, and I will trust that cabinet members who attended and watched the meeting as well will recall the debate. So agenda item number 7 is the Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan. And I will remind myself whether I'm doing the introduction to this or not. When I find my page, there we go. Yes, it is me. Okay, so we've been through the Corporate Peer Challenge a number of times. Members will recall that we asked the LGA to come in and provide us with some additional support and recommendations around how we can assist Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Finance, Audit and Risk Committees functioning and providing added value and feed in to our effective system of scrutinising the decisions that we take and our forward plans at this council. I think the recommendations that have come out of that are generally sound and largely supportive. There are obviously certain timelines, however, that we need to be mindful of, given that we're moving to all-out elections and there will be a completely fresh administration from next May. So things around changing perhaps the remit of FAR or sort of the items that the two different committees cover, we felt it might be best to leave those on a longer timescale. Everything's set out in the action plan, and in the absence of timelines that are in that action plan, we propose that managing those timelines is delegated to the leader, the deputy leader, and the managing director, consulting with the relevant committee chairs and vice chairs. Our trust colleagues have seen enough of this particular item over the last few months to be satisfied with it, but I'm happy to propose a report and take any questions. Yes, Ruth.
I'm happy to second it.
Excellent. Any questions? No. Could we have a vote, please?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, which moves us on to item number 8, which is Peer Support Action Plan for Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, located at page 41. There's also a referral from Finance, Audit and Risk on this item. So before we get into the main agenda item, I will ask Sean, are you happy to present your referral?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the discussion that was had at committee, I think referring to the chair's comments as well, in full agreement for those items that had been, I think it's fair to say, held off for the time being, with the timescales pushed back into next year, given some of the other changes that have been put in place recently, and to ensure that any changes that may have crossed over into the Overview and Scrutiny Committee didn't take effect at this time. There was, I think, again, thanks to Ian, among others, as well as Chris Wood, for some of the training that's already been provided. It's been very useful so far. And attendance generally has been pretty good at each one. I think that links in as well to the comments from especially those of us who were either fairly new from last year or new this year, about understanding the role of the committee, understanding what it is we're there to do, and to make sure that we were in the right skill sets to be able to undertake the duties that we have been asked to deliver on. Other than that, I don't think there was anything else, and there was definitely no challenge to the recommendations put forward.
Thank you very much. Do colleagues have any questions for Sean? No? Brilliant. Thank you very much. And for my part in proposing this, again, I'm quite satisfied with the work that the LGA has provided. I think that they've given us some really good feedback for how we can continue to improve the way that this council works. And again, issues around timelines and when we put certain items on track, I think it's best for this council to consider, given the changes that we are going to have coming up over the next few months now. So colleagues, happy to propose the report. Could I have a seconder? Excellent. And any questions or debate? Nope. Could we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. And now that brings us on to agenda item number 11, which you will find at pages 107 to 142 of your agenda pack. That's the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, an update and consultation report. Can I ask Councillor Brown to present?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the LC whip, which went out for consultation, went round all the area forums and various other parish council, town council, various bids, all sorts of people had an input into it. And as you'll see from the appendices, there was quite an extensive consultation. A lot of people took part. The under 30s were slightly underrepresented. Well, significantly underrepresented, but there was a proactive attempt to go into schools, and that wasn't very successful, but we did have a lot of comment on this. And it is obviously part of a document, the daughter document to the Hertfordshire's local transport plan, which is a county document. And the idea is that we have an agreement on the priorities for our cycling and walking infrastructure, so that when funds become available, we know what our priorities are already and are ready to move. Because often, as we've heard already this evening, often these government grants come with very short timescales. So that's really the purpose of having already written and consulted on it. So this paper is just presenting the updates as a result of the consultation. And there's a whole appendix which tells you all of the updates, but I'm not going to go through that. I'm sure you're glad to hear that. But just to say that the main ones are at 8.7 in your report, are highlighted. And there was a very, very strong support for a safe cycling walking route from Ashwell to Ashwell and Morden Station. So that's been included. It wasn't on there before. There was a lot of objections to some of the proposals in Nebworth, so they have been altered and amended to reflect that, and some of them have been scaled back. And likewise in Royston, there was quite a lot of objection or concern about some of the modal filters and one-way systems, and some of those have been scaled back. Doesn't mean they're less necessarily not going to be considered in the future, but we need to take more time to consider those and the impacts of them and work with local people on that. So those are the three main changes, but the full changes are all outlined in the appendix. And I think Cabinet's to note the Appendix A, which is the result of the consultation, and then to endorse the recommendations and proposed changes that are outlined in Appendix B. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for this report? Yes, Councillor Hoskins. Okay, and before we move on, are there any questions or debate? No, I'm seeing nobody indicate. I just wanted to say thank you to Ruth and to the officers who have facilitated quite an in-depth and positive bit of community engagement on this project, getting round to the town talks, the area committees, and really promoting and pushing it out as much as possible to ensure that everybody in the district has had the opportunity to be involved and to provide feedback. And I think actually 8.7 is one of the most positive sections of this report, because it shows that where we've had that feedback, we've been flexible and we've made adjustments and changes to reflect what our communities tell us they need in those spaces. So could we move to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next item is agenda item number 12, the Active North Herts Strategy. Councillor Jarvis to present.
I thought it happened automatically. So this is a strategy for activity in North Herts. We, in the past, have not had a strategy about what we're trying to achieve in terms of activity and leisure provisions. So this is being put together to fill that gap and ensure we understand what we're trying to achieve. And the objectives are clearly that we should continue to provide facilities for people across the district to be active, but that we should put some emphasis on increasing levels of activity amongst those who are least active. Now, compared with many places, North Herts doesn't have a serious deficiency in activity. We do much better than many places, but that doesn't mean that there are not some significant groups of the community who are less active than the norm, and who would not benefit from being more active. It would improve their health and improve the quality of their life in many ways. And the strategy sets out some ways of dealing with that, making better use of our green space for outdoor sports and leisure activities, working more closely with partners across voluntary sector, with sports clubs, with other providers of leisure activities, increasing locally based opportunities. So clearly one of the reasons that prevents some parts of the community from engaging is that there are not facilities available which they can easily access for all sorts of reasons. And there's scope for doing more outreach activities that will enable those people to participate. In addition to asking you to adopt the strategy, which is included in the appendix, there's also the question of a position of an active communities officer. Now, that position is one that is currently funded from the UK Shared Prosperity Funding until 2025, but we need to make provision as part of the new leisure contract for that officer to continue in post after 2025 for at least the first 5 years of the new contract. So Cabinet is being asked, in addition to approving the strategy, to recommend to the Council that we should provide a budget of 50k for 25-26 onwards to ensure that the active community strategy delivery work that we will have started by then can continue when the UK Shared Prosperity Funding runs out. So I'd like to propose the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Steve. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Willoughby. Any questions or debate on this item? My goodness, we're asking for more money and Councillor Albert's got nothing to say. No, we're all happy. Right. Excellent. Great. Let's quick before he changes his mind. Can we move to a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Mic on. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 13 is strategic planning matters. It's at page 181 in the agenda pack. I will ask Councillor Brown to present.
Thank you, Chair. This is quite a comprehensive report, covers a lot of areas. It's really a summary of what's going on. Some of the areas we've already talked about, the LC whips, some areas and the conservation, some of the conservation areas, so I won't go over those. Just want to highlight a few things. So at 8.6, you've got the proposed timetable for the remaining supplementary planning documents. So we've already adopted the developer contributions, but we have a timetable there for the Sustainability, Biodiversity and Design Code ones, for the consultation and then the adoption. Then I just wanted to highlight under the strategic sites, we've got 6 very large sites. The first, which is coming to planning committee, is Highover Farm, and that will be coming on the 6th of July to our planning committee. So that's quite a significant step forward since we adopted the local plan. At 8:13, Ickleford neighbourhood plan has been out for consultation, which ends today. So we will report back on that later. And we have talked about already Ashwell Conservation Area, and we will be talking about Purton, but I just wanted to highlight 8.16, Chesfield. There were quite a lot of representations from residents. However, there are some key stakeholders that weren't involved in those discussions, so we are going to go out and discuss with them further on that before bringing it back to Cabinet. And then I'm sure members are aware that Luton Airport has submitted their development consent order recently for expansion to from 18 million to 32 million passengers a year, including a new terminal. That's at 8.27. This council submitted our response by the deadline last Friday, the 23rd of June. We made an in-principle objection and we expressed our concerns regarding noise, air quality and surface transport. And you will note then at 8.33 related to that item that we are asking Cabinet to approve that the remaining 85,000 of the excess planning fees that were put aside in a reserve budget contribute to a joint representation together with Herts County Council and Decorum, because there's a lot of work involved in making representations regarding Luton to employ consultants and so forth. And that would be our contribution. So that's under 8.33. So we're asking for Cabinet's approval for that. Couple of other things. So under 8.42, the bus service improvement plan, Herts County Council have been given some significant extra bit of money towards buses. Main benefit in North Hertfordshire is going to be around reduced fares, but there's also the potential for bus priority schemes in Hitchin, yet to be proposals yet to be developed and consulted on, and some info points in some of our other towns. Just an update on the EV charging points, 8.52. We have submitted our fund some time ago, actually, our application to get funding from the OZEV. We're still waiting on a result on that. There are other options. Hertfordshire have recently received a big pot of funding for electric vehicle charging, which we may be able to access part of if we don't get the OZEV funding. So all would not be lost. But we are still awaiting that outcome. And I think that's it, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for Ruth's report? Amy. Yep, I'll take Amy. Do we have any questions or debate on the updates that we've received, colleagues? No, and there were a number of appendices that we've been asked to note and effectively endorse. Are we happy with those as well? Yeah, okay, right. If there's no questions or debate, could I have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. I'm mindful that we're approaching 9 o'clock. Before I get into the next item, this is a longer cabinet meeting than we normally have. Do you colleagues need a break now, or are you happy to continue? Should we carry on? Okay, right, great. Item number 14 is the excuse me, is the report on our place narrative piece of work. This was also considered at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I think the report from them is at agenda item 6C. As Adam's not with us tonight, I will briefly summarise. We did get some really, really good, interesting feedback in that space. There was some good scrutiny provided around the organisations that we're engaged with in coming up with this particular piece of work. Queries were raised around, for example, you know, why wasn't Royston Bid one of the people that fed into this? And we confirmed that the bid were unavailable, but they have now got a new bid manager in place who will be consulted on this piece of work before it is rolled out. And local councillors were involved, as well as representatives from various arts and community groups. I think Councillor Munser noted that the work was generally quite positive, but there was one paragraph that he felt had an overly negative tone in the copy that was to be produced, and we had sort of a little bit of commentary and discussion around that item as well. But overall, the committee was very positive and quite supportive of us moving forward with a piece of work which is effectively going to facilitate us and our local businesses and communities delivering more. So with that said, given my laptop has just died, you want to make a comment on the overview and scrutiny? Okay.
Just a quick comment about the Royston first bid. Although they weren't, it doesn't record that they were officially consulted, one of their directors did attend a focus group. Okay. So they did have input.
There we go. So we just missed the note to record the attendee. Perfect. Right. So given my laptop's just died, I'll switch over to a different report to present and propose this item. So obviously, I'm going to recommend that we move forward with this piece of work. This is another one of those items that fell out of the LGA peer challenge that we had just before and then running into COVID, actually. And the benefit of places having a place narrative is sometimes when you are in a disparate area, it can be quite difficult to pin down those commonalities and those themes that really tell a story and help you sell your area as a place that people can come to live, to invest in, to develop local economies, etc. We had a former colleague who regularly said that there is no such place as North Herts, didn't we? And actually, I think a lot of the time our residents don't necessarily, thank you. A lot of the time our residents don't necessarily identify as being from North Herts. They identify as being, well, I'm from Hitchin, I'm from Letchworth, I'm from Baldock, I live in one of the villages, I'm from Royston. North Herts is a secondary, arbitrary administrative identity that is imposed through this weird thing called local government. So lacking a place narrative places us in that difficult position when we're thinking about communicating with our key partners. We're all telling different stories. We have fragmented communications. It leads to different identities. So by drawing together a place narrative piece of work, we can give ourselves as a place that does exist actually and has some fantastic communities and great skill sets and brilliant economic stories to tell and sell to the outside world. We can give ourselves that simple strapline that we can then push and go, well, this is what North Herts is. This is what North Herts does. We bring communities together. We bring business together. We are creative. And the proposed narrative has been based on research findings that you'll see from the papers. We worked very closely with Haringey, who've provided this service through the LGA at absolutely no cost to the council. The branding deliberately uses strong, bold, eye-catching colours. It avoids the council traditional colours. It avoids political party colours because this is not branding for the council. This is branding for our place. This is branding that enables and facilitates things like an economic development strategy, our town centre redevelopment strategies. It's something that organisations like our business improvement districts or investment zones or whatever might come out of future government tinkering, or things like the Heritage Foundation as well can link into when they're wanting to promote their work, when they're wanting to attract investment into the area and say, this is what this space offers to you. Implementing and embedding the place narrative is going to be absolutely key to it being successful. We are already working with external partners to get that buy-in. There's a number of different levels of application and embedding that we can go for, from relatively low to no cost options to medium and more advanced in terms of times and financial commitment. Those are all set out in the appendices to the report, and our partners are very happy to work with us and explore the different ways that we can use this new North Herts story and start to push and sell this council, this district, It will be the responsible of our communications team to lead the way on the embedding piece of work. And if anybody has questions or queries around what that might look like, Christine is available to answer those for us this evening. But ultimately, this is something that is going to be very much an evolution, working in partnership with our communities, with businesses, and with our residents. It's going to be a subtle evolution rather than a big bang type launch, because it needs to be natural, because we don't own North Herts at the end of the day. The people, our businesses, our communities own North Herts. This is a brand that we all ought to be buying into and moving forward and growing together to sustain a more vibrant North Herts community. So I will shut up. Do I have a seconder for this report firstly? Councillor Hoskins. And any comments?
I won't comment. Yeah, I think this is a good piece of work. I think it's provides the foundation for cohesiveness that I think has perhaps been lacking in the past. And I'm pleased to second it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comment, question, debate? Nope. All righty. Can I have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So the next item is item number 15. This is at page 269 of the agenda. This is the Waste Shared Services client team and corporate support arrangements. Again, I have a referral from scrutiny on this, which I will assume members have had the opportunity to read. This was item number 6D. And I will pass over to Amy to present the report and cover off any additional points and feedback that you heard from scrutiny if you want to as well.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to read out the exact summary and then we'll just go over any questions that I had. So the report is based on outcomes from member-led joint working group between East Herts Council and North Herts Council and workshops held for senior managers. It identifies the approach and considered necessary to corporate support arrangements affecting waste contract administration and management. Key drivers for the changes are to enhance the customer experience in line with transformation programs by improving the efficiency, effectiveness of process to support this. The report flows on from previous reports provided to overview and scrutiny and executive regarding the future management of waste. I understand I was asked questions overview and scrutiny. I'm happy to answer them again if they want to come up again here at Cabinet. I don't mind repeating myself.
All right, thank you very much. And I should note as well that we have got Chloe Hipwood online if members have got any technical questions that they want to ask about this particular report. So before I take questions, is there a seconder for this item? Yeah, Councillor Willoughby. Any questions, comments, debate? No. Right. Well, if everybody's satisfied, then I shall move us on to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Which brings us to item number 16. This is the Ashwell. Oh, no, it doesn't bring us to item number 16. That's the silly thing. We've done that one very well. We are going to, I believe, item number 17, which is the Pearton Conservation Area, not the Ashwell Conservation Area. And that will be at, I'm assuming members might have got there before me, actually, since I was on the wrong page. But Ruth is presenting on this one. 413, colleagues. So, Ruth, would you like to present?
Yes, thank you. So in a similar fashion to the Ashwell one, we're being asked to approve the new area. Again, it's been out from consultation. It's come back. Some revisions have been made. The proposed changes are in Appendix B. The consultation is in Appendix A. And I don't think I've really got anything else to say on it. I'll take any questions, or there's an officer to help if necessary.
Right. Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for this report? Yes, Councillor Prendergast. Okay. And any comments, questions, queries, or debates about Pearton? Specifically the conservation area report, not the village. Anybody? Okay, so I take it colleagues are satisfied with the work that's gone into this, and I think the previous points that Mr. Cook made around ensuring that we are engaging with ward members, the community, etc., will also be taken away, because clearly they don't apply to one place or another. They apply to everything that this council does and how we should be working with our communities. Right. That said, can I have a vote then, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 18 is at page 511 and is the Council Delivery Plan 22-23 Q4 update. This is also accompanied by item 6E, which is the referral from overview and scrutiny. Again, colleagues have had the opportunity to read and reflect on scrutiny's comments on this item, and I think Councillor Albert also was present at the meeting, so we'll recall some of that and may touch on that in presenting his report. Councillor Albert.
I was virtually present in the joys of YouTube and the perfection of YouTube and listening to the debate, and it also means you can wind it forward as well. But perhaps I shouldn't say that. The council delivery, but I have to say the council delivery plan discussion overview and scrutiny was excellent, and I think it's to their credit and the committee's credit. This is a really important paper, and I'll turn to some of the questions that the committee asked in a moment. I think there's certainly something I think for cabinet and senior officers to have a think about. The plan, as you know, brings together the key projects the council plans to deliver, including milestones, risk delivery, and performance indicators. The report for the year end on the council delivery plan in general includes updates to the date at which the report was produced. A further update to the local government boundary review report has now been received, so that project will be marked as completed. This report also includes progress against projects that are continuing, projects that have been completed, and in paragraph 8.6, new projects that will replace existing ones. Obviously happy to ask any questions. Obviously, Mr. Cooper's here to obviously pick up any sort of further detail around this if colleagues want a more detailed presentation. The committee, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, obviously asked a number of technical questions around the document. Obviously also touched on EV charging, touched on about the Royston Leisure Centre, solar panels and the procurement for that. But clearly, obviously, also discussed the resourcing risk that we have, and obviously it's a general risk there, and further detail to be provided either outside of the meeting or at the next meeting. And that certainly is something I think that cabinet that will be only too well aware of, and obviously we've had discussions around, with officers around our obviously the resourcing questions and making sure how we deliver our key projects. One of the questions that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee did ask, and I think it's a challenge for us, is around the prioritization of projects that are within the plan. I think we've got a really excellent council delivery plan, but clearly it's a living document and things change, things move on. Indeed, obviously we've had staffing changes in recent times, both in and sadly out of the council, and some key officers potentially leaving. And I think that's obviously does mean that I think one of the things that the cabinet needs to think about, and certainly I think we need to take away for discussion with senior officers, it is around whether we regard and whether we should be looking at setting some criteria for prioritizing the projects that we have within the plan. And I think this is something that we do need I think about. I'm not particularly looking for a debate this evening, but I think it's certainly something that we should rightly, and I think Overview and Scrutiny have asked a really good question. It's certainly something that we should take away. At the moment, I think, as was said at the meeting, the prioritisation tends to take place at service director level, with obviously service directors having a range of tasks and services that they need to do and prioritising within that. But clearly, I think that now we have got what is, I think, a really excellent document from Ian, from Rachel Cooper's done a huge amount of work on this. Now we have got this document in front of us. I think it does enable us to concentrate our minds a bit around what's here, what we should be doing, what do we need to do, what are the things that we might need to put indeed on a slower track. And I think it's a challenge for cabinet and for cabinet members and officer colleagues as to whether there are some projects that we actually think that we shouldn't be doing in the future, because it's a difficult thing to decision to take, but I think it is something that we always have to think about and bear in mind the resource questions that we've spent there. So I do think, Chair, in moving the recommendations in the project there, I certainly welcome the scrutiny of our colleagues on Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I think the questions that they asked, and certainly the one there about looking at how we might set some criteria for prioritising, in a sense, within our priorities that are in the council delivery plan. And that's something I think we should certainly think about and take away, Chair. So happy to move the report, and obviously with myself and obviously Ian Cooper to pick up any more detailed questions that colleagues might have.
Yes, thank you very much. And colleagues will note, I think if we refer to item 6E, scrutiny made a couple of recommendations to us. Those were that Cabinet notes the progress against council projects set out in the delivery plan, etc., and changes to milestone dates and risks. That Cabinet notes the deletion of projects outlined in 8.6 to be replaced by new projects in 23-24. Cabinet notes the completion in Q4 of the museum and Hitchin Town Hall recovery, customer portal, full review, council tax reduction scheme, green space management strategy projects, and that Cabinet notes the reduction in the town centre recovery risk score from a 3 to a score of 2. I think all of those points are relevant and we should note, but I think also, Councillor Albert, the point that you made around looking at the projects and thinking of this as a living document is something that we do need to make sure that we do take forward, because we know that our resources are going to be squeezed. We're having to do more and more with less and less. We set ourselves long-term, medium-term projects and then all of a sudden find that budgets aren't performing the way that they need to do, or that government's pivoted away from one particular type of funding provision, or we've got to waste money on yet another beauty pageant to try and secure funding to do the stuff that our residents just expect us to be able to deliver day by day. So I think that point around going back, prioritising and having a bit more centralised oversight over what's on the delivery plan and whether some things need to be moved up, some things need to be slowed down, or some things need to be taken off is something that we should take away. I don't think that I'm going to craft that into a formal recommendation for this evening. I think I'm going to let that sit with us. I'm going to let that sit with service directors. And if we could use our internal meeting spaces to start having those conversations, I think that that could be quite beneficial as we move forward. And obviously that then links into our budget setting process that we're going to be starting in the not too distant future at the end of the summer. So I'm quite happy to second the recommendations in the report and support the feedback that we've had from scrutiny. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you. A couple of points. I mean, one I think relates to the way in which we deal with projects where there's been significant change in terms of the reporting format. And the one I'm looking at is the Royston Leisure Centre solar thermal, where there have been some significant issues with what we were originally setting out to do. There is still scope to do something that will achieve similar results, but not in the same way. And I'm a little surprised that it still gets a little green triangle on that basis. So I think we need to think about many of our projects won't turn out the way we originally expect them to. In fact, that will probably be the majority. And I think we need to think of how we report about that, which recognises that what the community expects is the deliverable. And if that gets there via a different route, they don't care about that. What they care about is what comes out the end. So I think that's probably an observation on that. I think in terms of the prioritisation, I think we need to recognise that projects use different types of resources. And we also need to consider, we have some things in here which are about developing strategies. And if you don't develop a strategy, then maybe you can't figure out what you're going to do. But if you spend all your money developing strategies, you effectively wasted all of it. So I think we need to think about how we prioritise different types of projects rather than just have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 list.
No, I think that's excellent. And I would expect that your offices in your area, of course, on the leisure centre are going to give you an exception report to tell you what's happening. But it doesn't get reflected in these reports. So I think that it's a case of if there is an exception on a project, or if there is something that we need to explain more clearly, how do we incorporate it into this particular reporting mechanism so that all members are aware when they're scrutinising the council's performance, and our communities are also aware and informed and can hold us to account as well when things start to go in a different direction. Right. Any further points, colleagues? No. Can I have a vote then, please? Oh, I did get a second. Yeah, I'm seconded.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Right, the next item that I have is agenda item number 19 at page 543, which is the revenue budget outturn for 22-23. This is also accompanied by agenda item 6F, which is a referral from Finance, Audit and Risk. So before I take the report, could I ask Sean to present?
Thank you, Chair. So the considerations around this item looked at a number of different areas. Obviously, in general, it was seen positively that less is being spent. I think there was obviously a lot of questions then around some of the particular items in there. The parking charge write-downs were one particular area that got quite a lot of scrutiny, understanding why the variation between what had been looked at and planned for and what had actually come about, clearly having negative impact on the balance. A few of the other provisions as well were questioned. There was some questions as well around the sort of manner in which things had been looked at previously and budgeted in, and understanding how that could then affect things in the future. So in particular, the management fee around around the leisure facilities in particular, obviously still not quite back where it was, getting towards it, and then looking into the future, pretty much, I think Ian's words were pretty much back to the new normal, or something along those lines, which essentially refers to the fact that having had the last few years where clearly incomes at gyms, swimming pools and the rest has been down, we're now getting back to a position where that should be close to where it was before. I think other than that, discussion primarily then was thinking about any future items, about how the finance team would look at things going forward, understanding now without the effects of COVID-19 hanging so heavily over things, how that may affect the ability to budget for the future. And probably just questions around ensuring that that reality is reflected in maybe a smaller variance going forward. I think, again, it was just questions around quite big numbers in terms of the differences. But again, the situation we find ourselves in, I think it was fairly well explained and fairly understood. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I note the recommendations from FAR are the same as those set out in the report as well. So I shall pass over to Councillor Albert to present.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. And again, obviously, thanks to obviously Ian and his team for all the work. I'll say this once, so I don't have to say it again. Obviously, Ian and his team for all the work on these papers, and obviously thanks to the Finance Committee. I think was a really excellent meeting. In listening to it the other day. As colleagues will see, the report sets out the position on the revenue budget over the final quarter and the year overall. Appendix A provides a summary of the large budget movements across the year. We have the same moved in from a budget of 18.2 million to a draft final spend of 16.7 million. And as obviously as the Finance Committee and as Sean has just said, that is quite a significant difference. The large elements in relation to the reduction in spend are the COVID-19 provisions that were not required, and the increase indeed in investment interest income. Of course, obviously, the other side, as colleagues will also know, that whilst obviously it's great to have additional investment income, also we are obviously have significant inflation, which impacts probably even more on our budgets going forward. For 23-24, the budget provision has been decreased as part of the budget setting process, expected and to be confirmed at Q1 that the investment returns will be significantly above budget. However, it should be expected, and in the wider economic context, hope for that interest rates will decrease in later years, and clearly we hope that inflation will decrease as well. Table 4 sets out the details of spend movements in the last quarter. Table 7 sets out the expected year-end general fund position. Noting this will be obviously subject to the usual audit. Chair, I think it's the recommendations are in front of you there, and obviously it's considered by the Finance Committee, and I obviously ask you to support those recommendations in the paper, and obviously that we recommend to Council that recommendation 2.4 that we approve the net transfer from earmarked reserves as identified in Table 9 of 5.274 million. I move the report, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Albert's proposed that report. Can I have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Willoughby. Okay, any questions? Steve?
Yeah, well, one observation, I noticed that the income from church data is significantly more than was budgeted. And I think that's interesting, given how much I read about how much money the council had spent on a shopping centre a while ago. So I think it's important that we note the fact that it generates a significant amount of income. The other one is a question. I noticed there's a provision for £10,000 to be carried over for the boundary review, which rather surprised me, but as I understood that it was all published. And yet the report says that it might all be changed. But the Boundary Commission has published its
I think that's just sort of potentially in case there were any objections or if the boundary review report was called in by any of our MPs. So I think that's potentially a prudent hold. I see Councillor Albert's nodding along with me on that. Okay. So that's something that obviously will be released once the relevant time period, which I think might almost be up or have passed now.
I think it probably
is gone. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, happy with that. Okay.
Not a significant amount.
No. Any further questions or queries on that? No. Right. Could we have a vote then, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. That brings us on to agenda item 20 at page 561 of the agenda pack. This one is also accompanied by a report from FAR, which is item number 6G. So Sean, can I ask you to present that one, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think some of this has been covered in some of the comments from Councillor Albert on the previous item, but again, a lot of the discussion and questions here were around the effect of interest rates and inflation, both obviously the positive side in terms of the investments being up, but then obviously negatively in terms of how it affects spend for both the council and for residents as well. There was a couple of questions around some of the pieces around property improvements, understanding some of the elements there. Again, I think Councillor Jarvis referred to one of the particular items as well around the Royston Leisure Centre and the project there, just in terms of the variation. Other than that, again, some general comments around the balance of cost against return, understanding the council's role in that and what level of risk really we should be looking to take on board in terms of making sure that the investments were worthwhile in terms of what you could then bring in. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Councillor Albert, would you like to present your report on the investment strategy?
Thanks, Chair. And again, obviously the report's in front of you there. Sets out the position on capital budgets for the year up to the 31st of March and our Treasury investment returns. Tables 2 and 3 set out the changes to the forecast spend during the final quarter. And paragraph 8.6 details the capital schemes that have been completed during the year. The final section of the report from paragraph 8.10 and onward confirms that we fully complied with the investment strategy during the year and also the position on investment returns. The number of recommendations, Chair, in front of you from 2.1 through to 2.6, and obviously particularly to ask and for you to note that we're asked to recommend this report to Council and ask Council to approve the 22-23 prudential and treasury indicators and note the annual treasury report for 22-23. So if we can move those recommendations in front of you there. And just one query in, is that right? Should that be 22-23? The potential, should be 23-24. just in 2.6.
It's confirmed the performance during the last years. It's 22-23.
Okay. All right. So Councillor Albert's moved that. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Willoughby. Any questions or debate on this? No. Could we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And that moves us on to our final item tonight, which is agenda item number 21. This is the year-end report of the risk management governance. I've also got a referral from Finance Audit and Risk on this one at agenda item 6H. So Sean, could you present your referral first, please?
Thank you, Chair. So again, similar to the last item, there was discussion on this around the levels of risk, I suppose, that the council looks to take on, understanding the effect that it has and how that can be managed. A bit of discussion as well around being a risk-aware council in terms of actions are undertaken. There was some discussion as well around understanding where risk is generated from and looking at sources of information, looking at potentially other public bodies, central government as well, potentially, although I think evidence from today suggests maybe their risk registers aren't as top-notch as expected. There was also, I think, especially for those of us who are slightly newer into role, some more information around SIAS and the shared anti-fraud service as well, just understanding about their inputs and how they assist with some of that risk management side as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Albert, would you like to present your report, please?
Again, thanks, Chair. And report, as I say, sets out what's happened in relation to risk management over the year. Whilst it also includes the various corporate risks that are included in the council delivery plan, it also provides a wider look at other risk management activities, and particularly obviously draw your colleagues' attention to paragraph 8.7, which obviously talks about our risk appetite and horizon scanning, as well as the insurance business continuity and health and safety. And clearly, obviously, that's something that we've discussed, I think, in a number of meetings about the council's risk appetites following the peer review and obviously that Be Brave exhortation that we had as part of the peer review, obviously balanced by obviously making sure that we are looking after our residents' money well, safely, and providing value for money on the investments that we make. And that's always that judgment between these two different things. The paper obviously also promotes the role of our performance and risk management group as a forum for more in-depth risk discussion. That's open to obviously to members of overview and scrutiny and Finance Audit and Risk to attend if they're interested in attending that discussion. And clearly, obviously a number of service directors attend, and clearly, obviously, if cabinet colleagues are interested in coming along to a meeting, I'm sure Mr. Cooper will be only too pleased to provide you with an invite to the meeting, and you can see what happens at those meetings. There's a number of recommendations there, Chair, in front of the committee from 2.1 to 2.3. So I'd like to move that report, Chair.
Thank you very much. And in moving that as well, I'm sure you'll note that we had an additional recommendation from FAR, which was that we would note the comments provided by the committee on the risk management update and refer this on to full council. I'm assuming that we're quite happy to do that and allow FAR's feedback to be included with that referral onwards. So could I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Willoughby again. Councillor Prendergast keeps going to press his button like that. I'll take him as a seconder. Councillor Jarvis.
Don't press my button after it's been seconded. I mean, we've talked about this before, but I remain concerned that we have nothing climate related in our risk register at all. And I think that's an issue from 2 points of view. And I accept not everything going there, but we have got a risk that we might not deliver the tourism strategy on time. And I have to say that a small delay in the tourism strategy is probably not going to be a disaster for most people in the district. But there are two aspects of climate risk that I think we perhaps need to think about. The first is we've set ourselves some ambitious targets, and it isn't clear to me that we've yet identified how we're going to meet them. We've made some progress, but we've got some more work to do, and there's a significant risk remains that we won't meet them. The second is there are significant adaptation risks, because we are going to find that there are some things which are going to potentially cost us a lot more money as a result of changes in climate. And those are things that we need to be thinking about. And at the moment, maybe that's buried at a lower level in all these individual risks, but it has potential for impacting a lot of the council's deliveries. There were some days last summer when we had difficulty emptying the bins because it was too hot. There is a serious risk of that happening a lot more. There is a serious risk of us not being emptying the bins on many more days because it's too snowy, or because bits of the district are flooded. And I'm not particular, those are just some easy things to highlight. But I think we need to think about those two issues, our ability to deliver what we've said we're going to, and the impact that climate change may have on our ability to do other things for our communities. And I don't see that covered in the current risk management strategy.
I'm hearing a potential recommendation that might come out of that, or potentially work that needs to be taken offline. Before I think further on that, Councillor Albert.
Yeah. I was going to say, some of those risks do sit at service director level. Ian, would you like to sort of comment on that specific point?
As it stands, all these corporate risks feed through from the council delivery plan. And I suppose it is a concern that at the moment there is nothing in the council delivery plan around climate change actions. Obviously, there are measures in place to address that, particularly additional officer recruitment that's gone through council. So I think as part of the new council delivery plan, we refresh it, where this feeds into discussion around project prioritisation. We need to start to reflect that, and that will then naturally feed through into this report as well, because I think it is a risk and it is a project, but it needs to be resourced to get there. So yes, I think it's right, it's highlighted, and that's the mechanism will achieve that.
Are you happy with that for now, Steve, or do you want something more?
Well, I think a question and an observation. The question is, what sort of timescale are we expecting that process to be dealt with? And the observation is that I think we need to record, I think we should record that that's something that needs to happen.
Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is part of the next version of the council plan in September, is around getting that some form of action on there. It might be not very well developed thus far in terms of what those actions will be, but it needs to be over time improved, so we get to all those actions that need to take place in relation to climate change. And yeah, I guess even without that, we would need to put on the risk register around that corporate risk around not, as you say, not achieving the climate change objective and the 2030 target, but equally around that adaptation risk as well. So yeah, they'll both come, and they'll both come very soon. It's just not happened yet, but will happen.
In which case, I think we should just record that needs to happen.
So you want that as a minute rather than a recommendation?
Yeah, I think it probably needs to be a recommendation.
Do you have a form of words?
That the risks associated with climate change should be recognised when the council plan is updated in the autumn.
Yep, happy with that.
Council delivery plan rather than council plan.
Sorry?
Council delivery plan rather than council plan. But yes, we're getting
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, so Councillor Albert, do you accept that additional recommendation?
Yes, that would be absolutely fine.
Yeah, and Councillor Will be happy to second it. Questions, queries, debate? I see none. Can we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Right. Thank you very much, colleagues. That brings us to the end of the business for this evening. As I said at the start, there was no other business put forward to us. Thank you to everyone who's participated, and good night. I'll close